All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, and this is Conversations on Retail. And we are here today with Denise Natishan, a senior partner at Cameron Smith and Associates. Denise, it's great to see you. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be here. And I was telling you just before we started, it's hard to be on this side of an interview. I'm usually the one asking the questions. So I'm like, oh no.
You were joining Cameron Smith and Associates back in 2005, just as I was beginning my entrepreneurial journey. And that's when I got to know Cameron and a lot of the core members of the team. And I'd love for you just to spend a few minutes talking about what CSA is and what's your role today.
Very good. Okay. Well, we are, as everybody probably knows, we're a leader and been a consistent leader here in the community as far as consumer packaged goods. And really, our backyard has always been Walmart supplier teams and building those. But as we grew and as our suppliers and as the people that we've worked with over the years continue to grow, we grew outside of this area. So we are nationwide. We're actually international at this point. And so we do have we help supplier teams across all major markets, and we do it focused in on grocery, we do drug channels, we do mass retail, and always from the inside of the supplier teams, not working necessarily with the retailers themselves. So we love to think that we are trusted partners to our clients and to our candidates.
Yeah, and you are one of the many, many transplants in this area, like me and like so many others that
Yes.
didn't grow up here, that moved here, because to some extent because of Walmart's presence in Northwest Arkansas. And I'd like to kind of hear about the road for you to Northwest Arkansas, beginning all the way back to your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Okay, that's a good question. I actually am an Army brat, so I started to think about some of the questions that you were going to ask and ways that I could describe who I am and what my background is. So one is I was an Army brat. I was born in Pennsylvania, but spent the first 3.5 years of my life in France, which many people don't know. Traveled extensively as a child. So I think the resiliency and learning to be very adaptive has come in handy over the course of my lifetime, and ended up planting ourselves in Pennsylvania. That's where family had been. And one of the major influences, which I know you're also going to ask about, is my grandmother. Yeah. She was always there for me and always that person that was just one of the kindest, most giving, generous people, and yet very strong in who she was as a person. So I always helped. That was really one of my influencers. And so when I grew up, this is an interesting part of what I think my past is too, is I didn't come from a very affluent family. My father and my mother were not as successful financially as some other people, but I feel like we were very rich in terms of other things that my family taught and had for us. And so as the years went on, I knew that I wanted to go on to college, and I wasn't quite sure. My brother and I are first generation being able to go to college. Different than when I look at what happens for other people now who have had those people pave the way. So it was an interesting career for sure, and thought I wanted to be a teacher. I would always say that I was a bit of a late career bloomer, as I found myself later on in life falling into recruiting, and yet knowing that this is what I was meant to do all my life. I feel that helping people and being able to make a difference in their lives is something that has just been probably one of the greatest gifts of learning about how to do recruiting the right way.
And that idea of helping people and giving back, is that something that touched your life during your childhood? Have you always been an empathetic person, always been a people person?
I would say so. I've thought of different things. I actually was a cheerleader in high school. So I think I have this thing where I always want somebody to do well and I'm cheering them on. And I feel that way. And I think that as I looked at my career, I felt like that teaching was going to be the area that I was going to be successful in being able to make that happen. And I actually went into special ed and early childhood education. And I was teaching at different points in my life. In fact, I was up in Toronto, and I decided at that point that I really wanted to go back and be more of a child psychologist. I really wanted to help more in a one-on-one way to make a difference, because I felt like many of the children I had worked with needed more than just learning how to spell or learn their alphabet. I felt like they needed love and understanding. And so going on for that was the way that I felt like I was going to be able to make a difference. So it's always been at the root of who I am. I think when I look back on my childhood, and maybe that comes from being the new kid always at a school and a new kid someplace else, to have compassion. And then as I was going on to get my master's degree, I actually met this woman by the name of Meg Mitchell, who again became one of my major role models in my life and a mentor to me. Meg had her own executive search firm. She was way ahead of the curve back in the day. She placed women at board, middle, and senior management level positions. I was just doing research for her at the time, but we actually hit it off very well because she was from the States originally. She was kind of doing a career transition at that point, and she asked me if I'd be interested in helping her, if I would consider doing what she was doing once I finished my degree. I thought about it for about 30 seconds, and I'm like, you know what? I had this attitude in my life, I could do anything for a period of time. So I thought I can try this, and if it works, that's great. It seemed like she had a really exciting life, and I was in. So, but I knew nothing about recruiting. I knew nothing about business at the time. I was truly a teacher, truly coming from that world. And so she mentored me each step of the way on how to do the business. And I am forever grateful for her because of her, the way that she taught me and included me, helped me to understand at a very significant level that we were changing people's lives. And it was really important as far as the match that we made, and made sure that we put the right people in the right positions. It was a retained situation that we worked on, and so it was critical that the match was there. And I still feel that way, and I still feel so strongly that everybody that I come in contact with, it's about their lives and how to make a difference for them and help them in some way. Cameron's been an incredible role model that way too. And I've just seen it over the years as far as how he has not only gone out into the community and helped with boards and community service and charities and events that he's been involved in, but he brings everybody into the office, whether we could help them or not. And we all have adopted that kind of a stance here at CSA, thanks to Cameron. And I'd say we have over 30 charities that we've worked on together as a group, and over 10 of us or 10 different board seats that we've all been on. So I've kind of gone all over the map here for you.
No, that's great. And I definitely want to make sure we spend some time talking about Cameron, because I am one of the many people in this supplier community that have been touched and impacted in such a profound and positive way by having an opportunity to get to know Cameron and work with Cameron. But I want to go back to a few minutes ago. You talked at the very beginning about being kind of an Army brat, and I'm just wondering, you said something a moment ago about you had this idea that you could do anything, at least for a period of time, and I just wonder if seeing your parents pick up and relocate and start over in the new schools and all this, kind of recontextualizing every aspect of your life over and over and over, is that what created in you this confidence in being able to just go and do something completely different and try it out for a period of time?
I would have to say that is, when I look back, I think that's where I can point to as far as what would give me that kind of a confidence, because some of the things I have done, like I will tell you another story that just kind of cracks me up too, is I became a runner later in life. I was always active, but I decided to start running later after I was out of college. And I did maybe some 5Ks, 10Ks. I met this woman up in Toronto when I was doing some part-time work, and I became a fitness instructor. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing, but she said, oh, you could, it's as easy. And so she showed me, and I said, okay, I can do this. And then she said, well, you run about an hour a day, don't you? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, if you run 2 hours a day, you could probably run a marathon. And I'm like, okay, I think I could do that. And little did I realize she was an elite marathon runner, and she had actually won several marathons and had a three-hour marathon average. Like that was her. And so I'm thinking I should run a marathon in 3 hours. So after I ran 2 hours, I'm like, I think I could do this. If people are watching me, I probably could run an extra hour. So I actually ran my first marathon, not knowing what in the world I was doing. And thanks to Dawn Hardy, that she was an inspiration to me too. So I don't know where I get it from, but that certainly little things like that contributed. And I'm sure being an Army brat, picking up and constantly moving, constantly changing
Yeah.
places. And yes, I think it
Yeah.
had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So you were at Thomas Mitchell and Associates for 7 years and then left to work for a company called WLC, which I know absolutely nothing about. So talk about WLC and talk about kind of what motivated you to leave Thomas Mitchell and go to this this new place.
Well, it's very simple. Basically, I had been in Toronto for quite some time and I loved it. It was an amazing experience to have that international opening you up to what diversity really looks like and how it can play out. And I truly loved being in Toronto, although at the same time, I felt a longing to get back to the States, and I felt like it was time for me to transition back. And I thought I could always return, but I needed to feel back here somehow in the States. And so while I was in Toronto, I had made contacts because one of my other passions is health and wellness. And it was the Holistic Life Center, and it was way ahead of its time. It was very rustic. It was all about your health and wellness and well-being. And I decided to take a plunge and kind of park my little corporate world, so to speak, and start doing that. And it was just an incredible experience. And actually, while I was here doing it, and I wasn't planning on staying, nobody plans to stay usually, right? I mean, we all plan to, I'm going to get out of here at some point in my life. And so I was thinking about leaving, and I had gotten a call from one of my good clients up in Toronto, and they had a position. It was actually Hiram Walker. They had a position down in Fort Smith and asked me if I could help them. And I was like, I'm not really doing that much recruiting, and I really don't know this area. They said, well, you're a recruiter. This is what you do. And I'm like, oh, this is what I do. And I certainly feel like I could probably do it. Like I can do anything, right? So,
Right.
but I also thought I can ask for help. And so that's actually how I met Cameron. I picked up that search. I said, I can do it. Cameron was still in Fort Smith at the time.
Yeah.
And I ended up asking him. I called him on the phone, and I always remember, it was funny because I didn't want him to think I was muscling in, because I certainly had not planned on staying here either. And so I said, I'm here doing a search. I don't know if you would be able to partner with me, help me. And Cameron's like, I don't do those kinds of searches. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, what do you do? And so he explained what he did. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And so when I was down in Fort Smith doing some interviews with Hiram Walker, I stopped by and met Cameron. And we were just going back and forth. And I think he's like, I don't know if I want to bring somebody else on. And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to join and do this. And we kept going kind of back and forth. And we had talked several times. And I think it's that same thing. Well, I can do anything for a year. So I thought, well, he said, do you want to try this? And I said, sure. So, and here I am like 15 years later.
and so what did Cameron's business look like at the time? Because he is largely credited for the supplier community as we know it in Northwest Arkansas today. It was kind of his early vision. You know, Walmart had a lot to do with it as well, and the changing relationships between they and their suppliers. But Cameron was really the one that connected the dots and said, you know, these companies really should be here. So what did CSA look like at the time? At the beginning for you?
Yeah, he was a visionary. When you think about where everyone was and what was happening, I think that, you know, there were about Boaterre existed, and there were probably not very many other office parks. And so what did Cameron, I would think, talk about 50 suppliers at the time that were here. And now we talk about over 12 or 1400. I lose track of the numbers, especially when you think about all the companies that have merged after all those people that had been here. And so it's quite astounding. So back in the day, Cameron, like I said, we all focused in on just Walmart and Walmart supplier teams. And you know, we think about what the analysts look like then, and you think of the evolution of where they are today. And in the beginning, people were just pulling reports, and there's no way somebody's just going to get away and get a job as an analyst pulling a report. You have to be able to dive into the numbers, tell the story, go beyond. And so it was very limited, but it quickly expanded. I mean, it certainly was, you know, that idea of if you want a presence here, if you want a voice at the table, you get a presence here. And so there it was. People kept bringing and coming, and we kept expanding. And it was it's been a very exciting ride. It's just always amazing to me. And I'm sure anybody that's been here for a period of time, yourself included, when you look back and look at office parks or just look at what's grown in terms of buildings and communities, it's astounding.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. And yeah, well, I was going to tell you a story of my own, but it doesn't
Go ahead,
matter.
tell me a story, because
Well, I know I was going to say, when I went to Japan for a couple of years on an expat assignment with Walmart. And so I was gone in 2003 and 2004, and just being away for those 2 years, you come back and don't even recognize the town. And that's what it's been like really for the last, 15 years. We moved here in 1998. And it was just this, I remember when, getting an Olive Garden was like, oh my gosh, we're getting an Olive Garden. We've arrived, and that was nothing, right?
I remember when it was just Restaurant Row, and that was the only place you could go, and we were like, oh my gosh, there was one Starbucks when I first got here.
So we called it the Quad. If you wanted to go over to Rogers and have Applebee's or there's 4 restaurants to choose from in the Quad over in Rogers. And yeah, it really is. It's been fun to be here and kind of be a part of the story. So
sorry, I was just going to say,
go ahead, please.
I always I feel like we could all sell real estate here now, just when you think about the expansion and all the benefits and how we have the bike trails, the concerts, everything that's here, the museum. I mean, thank you, Waltons, for all that you're doing to make this such an amazing place.
No doubt. And I can't help but think, and nobody knows, but I can't help but think that we are going to see a second wave that we've not seen anything yet, that when Walmart gets their new headquarters online, when they kind of reaffirm their commitment to the community in that way, I think we're going to see a second wave that makes the first one look like nothing. So I think Northwest Arkansas's best days are absolutely ahead, and it's so exciting to live here, to be a property owner here, to be a business owner here, and it's gonna be fun.
Good times are ahead.
I think so too. So at least the beginning for you with Cameron, and let me ask you this. I think it's important. When you joined Cameron, how many years before that had he been kind of focusing on Walmart suppliers?
That's a good question. I'd have to ask him. I think.
Okay. It couldn't have been very many, right?
No, I think he was at least, maybe it was 6, 7 years. I know. Actually, it was pretty early infancy stages for him as well. Because he was still working out of his home in Fort Smith, and he was just moving up here. And we just, at the time when I was joining, he decided to move up to from Fort Smith to Rogers. And we had a office on the square.
Yeah, I remember. In fact, the sign stayed there for several years after you all left.
That's right.
So in those early years, were most of the supplier teams that had a presence in Northwest Arkansas, was it talent that they relocated to Northwest Arkansas, or was it local people, former Walmart associates, et cetera, that they were able to recruit and use to staff those teams?
It's a great question, Matt. I believe for what I would say is the majority of people, initially, some of the more senior positions were people that relocated in. And I think that was also how we got a lot of our business, because once people came, and they came kicking and screaming, and I'm not coming here, and my wife doesn't want to come here, my husband doesn't want to come here. But once they're here and they see the quality of life, then people wanted to stay. And so then the chairs started moving around as far as expansion of teams. There were also a lot of people that went through and were able to come out of Walmart, I think, at different levels and join teams. And of course, then there were some people that just get in on the early level stages. And I think the community college, I'll give a shout out to NWA, or to the Northwest Arkansas Community College, for the program that they had, really helped train a lot of people to be able to enter the vendor community as well.
Yeah. Well, so now I want to transition now and get and thank you so much for sharing some of the story of kind of your upbringing and your journey from there to here. I want to spend some time talking about how the world is changing, at least through the lens of you and your partners at CSA. I know one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the years is this idea of breaking in, and it used to be that internships and but it's gotten harder for someone just to show up at a supplier office with a resume and get a job, right? So talk a little bit about, for someone who, maybe is contemplating, and there used to be a lot of people that were like, well, I think I've sold real estate and I've taught for years, I think I want to go work for a supplier. That used to be something that was a realistic, idea, and the game has changed so much. Talk about some of those changes, and if a person, wants to join a supplier team, what does that look like today?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And I know we do a lot of work with the U of A and talk to MBA programs and to the student graduates. And we really encourage internships, because if you get an internship, you have at least your foot in the door to be able to get the opportunities that you have. And I think that there's still, some opportunities as far as if you haven't made that transition, if you know some people that might be able to take you on. But we've done a couple of different speaking engagements to places, and we talk about the gap. Like, you get to a certain place, if you're at a certain level in your career, unless you're willing to take an entry level analyst and you're willing to go back to a certain level in terms of compensation, you're going to have a harder time breaking into the community. So if you're expecting $100,000 salary and you have no vendor experience, no supplier experience, no understanding of Walmart, good luck. That's not going to really happen that way. So there are, what we talk about, Cameron always talks about the supplier community as far as the vendors that actually sell into Walmart. And then the second circle is the people that are servicing those vendors. And we fall into that second circle of people that help service vendors. But there's a lot of third-party companies, as you know, that help, whether it's a broker, places like Crossmark, Advantage, Acosta, whether it's places like Mars that do, or any of these that help as far as providing another service, whether it's packaging, insights, or e-com. There's all kinds of ways to sometimes get your foot in the door with one of those and then make your transition in. Again, it has to probably at this point be an entry level position. And I think that people need to be aware of that and be willing to take that kind of leap of faith that they can advance their career if they're willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, the next question I want to talk to you about is this idea of career. I know, spending time on LinkedIn and just having a lot of relationships, as do you in the supplier community. It seems like folks, generally speaking, will be, a couple of years here, maybe a couple of years there. Are you seeing more of a trend toward specialization within a practice? For example, someone goes into category management and stays there, or goes into shopper marketing and stays there. Are you seeing, maybe it's by organization by organization, are you seeing more a development of generalists and people kind of all working toward a team leadership role? What is a typical career, if there's such a thing? What does a typical career look like for someone who joins a supplier team?
That's a good question too. I don't think that there is a typical career, but I think that there are career tracks that certain people go into. And if you're in category, you're in category. And if you're in sales, you're in sales. And some of those can go back and forth, and you could see people make a transition. I think it's a lot of people understanding fact-based selling, understanding the analytics behind it. So any good VP, team leader, whoever it is at the top, has also had a really strong understanding of what the basics are in terms of being able to tell the story. And so I think sometimes people have a misguided idea that you just scoot up to the top and miss out on some of the early years of doing some of the grunt work. I think that there are paths that people like and that they're better at. Some people are great at supply chain and love that, and that's their track, and that's where they're going to stay. I see that it seems like there are certain areas that people do well in, and then if they go outside of it, it's harder to make that transition. So if you're in supply chain, I do see now that replenishment and supply chain analysts are almost like blending with sales analyst a bit, so that you have one as opposed to two different positions. That's happening a little bit differently. And so I think it's really up to the person to be able to create what they want and understand it. I would say if anybody's looking to really be forefront in their career, they're going to be looking at omni-channel e-commerce trends and how can they get that kind of experience, because we all know that the future is going to be a lot more with e-commerce, omni-channel, and those are areas that we still don't have enough experience in those
Yeah.
areas.
Right.
And you're still a newbie if you even have 5 years experience, but it's exploding. Get in on the ground right now. That would be one of the areas that I kind of, if I were advising somebody, if they wanted to, that would be a key place to start.
Yeah. Well, and my next question for you was how people can remain relevant. You know, what are the skills that people need to be developing today in light of kind of the changing marketplace and the changing needs of Walmart and the supplier teams? But I'll ask the question differently. How do you remain relevant? Because I think people, I think there's a misconception, at least to some degree, and one of my next questions is going to touch on this as well. But this idea that recruiters, it's just like assembly line where post a job, fill a job, post a job, fill a job. But it's as much about helping an organization solve its problem as it is helping an individual make good decisions with respect to their career, and having to know as much as you possibly can, not just about the organizations and their needs, but the functions within and where that talent comes from. How do you, as a recruiter, how do you stay relevant and make sure that you're as close as you can be to trends, so you can provide the best service possible to both of your constituents?
Right. Again, you always ask good questions. So I would say that it's a mixture of everything that you would try to do, and just staying current. We want to read as much as possible. We want to talk to as many people as possible. I mean, I'd say 3/4 of my day is talking to people and trying to ask questions. And so I'm usually on the other side of it saying, well, tell me what you think. Where do you see your organization going? And I ask everybody. It doesn't matter if you're the analyst or you're the VP of the team. I want to get your different perspectives on what you see is happening within the workforce, and what do you see as trends that are happening. And I know, especially when COVID was going on, I picked up the phone and called a lot of my clients and said, what do you see happening? What's going on in your organization? What do you see as the trends for the future? And that's one of the key ways that you could stay relevant is, tapping into the key leadership of companies and getting an understanding of where they see problems, challenges, hopes, dreams. And for us, and especially I will say for myself in particular, I know I always want to match I feel like I'm a bit of a matchmaker, and that I always want to know that I'm putting somebody into a good situation. And so understanding what their career goals are, what's important to them in terms of a culture, what's important to them long-term, and then understanding my client, what's their culture like? Because everybody's a little bit unique, and it's like one size doesn't fit all. And the more you understand the nuances and the finer pieces of what that match looks like, the better you're going to have in matching a good, solid situation for someone with their career. And that's what's so fulfilling. And it's sometimes at a VP level, and sometimes it's an analyst making their first break into the community. And it's beautiful. Like, it's so fulfilling to me. So
well, and that kind of leads into my next question. As I say, over the 16-year career you've had with CSA, you've certainly been a part of thousands of success stories, and you can probably look at various teams in town and say, gosh, I remember when that team lead was an analyst. I remember when they were a replenishment manager. But at the same time, I also would bet that you have had a front row seat for a lot of things that went the opposite way, and so my question is, what are some of the common mistakes that would jump out with respect to mistakes that supplier teams have made in recruiting and selection and people development and retention, and what are some of the mistakes that you've seen individuals make as well that have maybe kind of put not put their career in jeopardy, but mistakes that has taken them a little bit of time to work through? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think the easier one is to attack or talk about what people do wrong. And I think that it's being short-sighted in their career development. And I think one of the other things that's really important is you don't know who you're going to meet along the way, someplace. You may interview at a company and you don't want that company, but you follow through and you do your very best, and you always treat everybody with respect and dignity and with a level of understanding. And I think sometimes we've seen people not do that. Like they've either left companies poorly, they've resigned, they've taken counters, they've jumped around too much. And then it comes to bite you in the back. Like you will come in contact with somebody someplace. This is a small community. And even if you go outside the small community, the people that have moved on, it's the CPG world, and the world that we live in is very tiny, and you get all kinds of feedback, and people are connected to people. So that's a bad, like I'd say people don't leave on a good note sometimes, and they don't treat people the way they need to. And I'd say even a recruiter, like a lot of times we get ghosted or people just don't respond. And it's not that I'm holding a grudge, but I will remember that you didn't follow through. And it leaves me with, well, are they going to follow through for my client? And so that becomes, I think, some of the issues that people face in changing their careers. And probably the other thing that people do here, and I think it's better, but people change jobs too quickly. They need to really think about why they're making the move and what's important to them. And I think when people are panicked, that's the other reason that they make quick moves and they make a mistake. So if somebody is in a downsized situation, I understand people have families to feed and situations like that, but take a deep breath and make sure you're making the right move for yourself long-term, not just a short-term move. And then in terms of companies,
we're all
go ahead.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
No, please. No, completely different subject. Go ahead.
I was just going to think that with companies, I think that it's really finding the right match. And I think sometimes what I've always wished is companies, and it's hard because you want them to just have somebody that is plug and play right then, that they could fit into the role and they can start up immediately on day one. But at the same time, there's such great talent sometimes, and somebody might need a little bit of an extra hand-holding, and there is not always the opportunity to do that hand-holding or do that mentoring that maybe is needed. And I think that is something that companies can do a better way of figuring out how to maybe bring on some junior talent within their teams.
Yeah. Talk for a couple of minutes about some of the extra things that people do, that smart people do, in order, because when I think of the kind of the best of shopper marketing folks and insights folks, it's always kind of the same names. And when you look at them, it's people that just don't just go to the office and do their job and go home. It's people that are serving on boards and they're involved in this and they're involved in that. Talk about the importance of those extra things in terms of not just giving back to a community, which is the right thing to do, but being top of mind when conversations are taking place where people are looking for help, looking for people on their team.
It's huge. And I know that, like I said, I know that here at Cameron Smith and Associates, we've all been involved in organizations, charities, and it's not just because it's the right thing to do, which it is. I mean, it really makes a difference. And I know I've been involved with the food bank and the Circle of Life. Those are just real, true passions for me. And I feel such a good feeling in the end, knowing that you've made a difference to help somebody else. But it's also then meeting people outside of the normal way that you would meet them. So you're on a committee or you're pulling together and you're working on a project together to bring something to fruition. And it really helps you bond, and it helps you to create a level of trust with somebody that you might not know or might not have a contact with. And it really just, again, it's that diversity of thought. It's the diversity of experience that helps you to have an understanding when you're talking to people. And people, like we said, it's a small community. So somebody knows somebody that, oh, I was on the Cancer Challenge board, or I just saw so-and-so at the food bank thing. And so there's a cross-pollination that's always going. I think it really helps because in a more not structured way, or in a way that you're going to all the different events, that you just get to know somebody and you get to find out some little tidbits even, like I'm always hearing tidbits from people when they're talking, and you can learn that when you're doing other opportunities.
Yeah. We're still trying to figure out the impact of COVID and how it's going to change organizations and the way that, teams gather and collaborate and
Right.
Managing customer relationships. But you alluded a moment ago about, the phone calls that you've made to supplier teams, trying to understand what sorts of changes they're anticipating in their business. So what are you seeing? What do you think things are going to look like, at least in the near term, as a result of COVID?
Well, I think the workplace is going to change. Obviously, it has this past year. Everybody's been working from home and it's been successful, which I think a lot of companies in the past that might have been, no, we're not going to allow even, I think it was a big deal to have Friday afternoon off, and now it's summer holidays for the person. And now this is going to be a new norm. It used to be work for your day as far as dress. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit work for your day as far as what do you need. Not everybody is equipped to work from home, and what I'm finding is a lot of people are excited to get back into the office, but maybe not full time, maybe 3 days a week or 2 days a week, or because there is something about having the culture and having collaboration and being together. And I know coming back into the office here, it's been exciting. It's been like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you. And just that kind of picking up of energy and picking up of ideas and bouncing off of each other is truly helpful. But then there's also a lot of times now, all of us are multitasking in so many different ways, sandwich families trying to deal with people that are elderly and children and getting everybody off to do different things. Having some flexibility to be able to manage all of that is critical. And families with dual income families, or dual income, not dual income, dual career families, trying to be able to manage that. How do you make that work for everybody? And so I think that there's going to be a lot more flexibility that's going to be seen and needed. And I think that the way work looks is going to look a little bit different. I think that the other thing that's happening and that we're seeing right now is how do companies find employee satisfaction, because it's kind of an employee, like, candidates have a good shot right now in being able to call their shots, and we're seeing that. So finding top talent.
So expound on that, the candidates being able to call the shots in what ways?
Well, they don't have to make moves. That's the biggest thing. Why am I going to make a move? Is it going to be for $5,000 or $2,000, or what is my motivation? And that's what it gets down to. What's your motivation for looking? So you need to have a compelling reason why you want a candidate or you want this company to be represented for them. And so it's really getting down to understanding the person and what's important, and understanding your client, what's important, and what do each have to offer that's going to make them like each other and fall in love and want to be together.
Yeah. I'm coming up with all these questions to ask you on the fly that I didn't have written down, but it always happens. So obviously, just like the real estate market and any other market, supply and demand isn't always going to be in perfect balance. And so I'm wondering, generally speaking, are there more positions now? Or are there more candidates now? And in the areas where there is a talent shortage, where are you feeling that the most?
I would say, and you would think that there should be a surplus of candidates at this point, but I think when you go to look for top talent, that is always the top. And so that is always at a premium. And that's why you need recruiters, seriously, because people aren't going to move unless you pick up the phone and call them and give them a reason why they should. And I think a lot of people who are happy, they keep their heads down and they're working and they know that they've got a good career path with their company. I think that where we're probably seeing some real needs are at strong analysts, like good, strong people that can come in and do analytical work and go beyond just doing just what I said in the very beginning, a report. How can you tell me a story from this report? How can you make this something that is going to help our sales team or help our category team or help the replenishment team? Don't just give me numbers, but help me to go beyond that. So I think, again, having somebody with good, strong analytical, and that goes beyond, like, there's so many technical skills that we don't have just beyond Retail Link, like as far as syndicated data or different programs that people are using now, that we need to see stronger candidates.
Yeah.
More technical skills, more relevance that way.
Yeah. You mentioned as a most common mistake, candidates having a tendency of burning short-sightedness and burning bridges and the whole idea of being a small town. What other advice would you give to someone early in their career? You know, doesn't matter, but this idea of a realistic job preview and its impact on retention. What things do you wish these candidates knew and understood coming into this that would contribute to their longevity?
I think for younger people in their career is to stay open and to be able to get a good, I'd say get a good mentor. I feel like people really need to have someone that's a mentor and a sponsor for them in their companies. And if you have that, if you have a trusted person that you could talk to and bounce ideas off of, because people say things or do things without probably the thoughtfulness of the way their words or their actions are going to impact them. I think that's advice for anybody. Just be careful of what your words are and be careful what your actions are, because they say a lot about who you are. Make sure your brand has integrity. So you as a person have integrity. There's a consistency on what I see, who you are across the board. And we talk about social media and everything gets videoed or recorded or pictures. And so I, as a recruiter, I'm going to be looking at that, and employer is going to be looking at that. Be aware of those kinds of things, where you're partying and what you're doing and how you're conducting yourself is critical. And to be able to, like I said, have a good mentor that can take you to a point where you need to maybe be balanced. Sometimes people think, well, I deserve this, I deserve that, like I have people say, well, I want a $5,000 sign-on bonus. I'm like, okay, well, why? Well, because everybody gets a $5,000 sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, everybody doesn't get a $5,000 sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
Are you losing a car? Are you walking away from a bonus? Are you tell me a reason why I should be fighting for that or be asking for that on your behalf. And so I think having realistic expectations comes from having somebody who's maybe been there and understand it, even understanding your career progression. Like we have had several people miss out on great opportunities because they think of it as a lateral. One thing I've thrown out are titles. I don't care what your title is anymore, because I could have a VP that is managing nobody, and I could have a director of sales that's managing 50 people. And so titles just aren't as relevant, and people get caught up in their titles. They get caught up in, well, I don't know if that's going to be a big enough career step for me. And some of my best hiring managers have always hired people that are maybe just right at that level or even a step down, because they want that person to come in and be successful within their organization. And I think some people miss out because they're like, no, that's not big enough for me. I need a bigger challenge. And yet at the same time, they could fall on their face because they haven't had the understanding of what that role is or what the company is, the new brands. And so there's so much that goes into a new hire that people sometimes are a little bit short-sighted on. Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at recruiters and think it's kind of a transactional role where you're just selling burgers, and once it's gone, it's gone. But as the top contributor at CSA, I'm sure you would say it's all about lifetime value on the client side, lifetime value on the candidate side. And how important has it been for you to maintain relationships on both sides during your 16 years at CSA?
Huge. I mean, it's everything. And you can't, here's I guess the bottom line. I cannot be successful, and I couldn't have stayed here this long if I were doing things that were not good for people. My whole goal, and anybody that knows me would know this, I want the best for you, whether or not I'm going to be successful in closing that search or not. So it might not be the best search for you, and or best company, best fit, and you could say no to me. That's fine. I would rather you do that and you find or stay at your company and be happy, rather than just pushing a square peg into a round hole. It's all about career fulfillment for somebody. And that's what's really, really important to me. If I don't have the relationship and the integrity with my client to tell them that this is not a good candidate, or tell somebody that this is a good opportunity, I've lost everything. And I know that over the years, what's been kind of fun is that people have become my friends that are in the vendor community, and people who are my clients have become my friends. And so it's huge. I think and I don't have to be your best friend, and you don't have to really like me all the time, but you have to trust that I'm going to tell you the right thing for you what I believe is good for your career or not career. And I'll hear people and I'll say, you know what, that's not a good time for you to make a move now. You've got
Yeah.
this bonus coming, you've got this happening, or even life circumstances. I have a lot of people that are, just starting their family. And I'll say, you know what, if I were you, I probably would wait until, a year later and see how it goes for you. So I think it's about just being sensitive to people's needs and being aware of them. And that's what's always been important to me.
Yeah. And where does your motivation come from? Is it really this idea of you just love people and you want to see them do well, and there's consistency in that? Or is there something you've yet to accomplish that you're chasing?
I don't feel like I'm chasing anything at this
Yeah.
point, but I do find continuous fulfillment in what I do. And I
Yeah.
think that because it's always changing, my clients are changing, my candidates are changing. It's always something new. So it's never like it's done. It's always next. And it's always something that I can see beyond as far as making a difference in people's lives. And so I know it maybe sounds a little hokey or something, but it's truly knowing that you're making a difference in this world. That's what gets me up and that's what gets me excited. And I honestly say that little prayer every day before I get
Mm.
started, that like I'll do the right thing for everybody, and
Yeah.
that I will be honoring and respectful of people and what their lives are like. It's not me that's going to go to the new job, and you're the one who's going to the new job, and you have to look yourself in the mirror. But at the same time, if I know some things about you or the company, I've got to really be honest about it. And I think the other thing that's been fun for me, the longer that I've done this, is I've become more honest with candidates as they come in. And
Yeah.
Heather, who works with me, she'll laugh because I'll be saying that person's not sitting up. They're not making eye contact with me. And so I tell people now where I maybe wouldn't have said that before in the past. And I do it always in a respectful way. Like, can I
Sure.
make a suggestion, or would you mind if I made a comment to help you? So I think that those are the things that are really important to me in the long run.
Yeah. You've answered this question 10 times in our hour together in terms of what matters to you and what's important to you and so forth. But I'll ask the question one more time differently, and that is, how do you want to be remembered?
Mm. Well, I think that, I maybe didn't say this as much as, but my family and my friends, and that's everything, like people are, what I do and how I make a difference is important. And the people that have influenced my life and have touched my heart so deeply, I want to be remembered as somebody that paid it forward and that I made them proud. And, I didn't even talk about how one of the things that kept me here with Cameron was I was able to take care of my mother while she was ill. And
Mm.
I had her for over 10 years living with me. And I was able to balance work and have her at home. And so I think knowing what I've been able to experience from other people's love and care, I just hope that I'm making a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think people fully understand, and I hope and believe that history will be very friendly to Cameron Smith and Associates. I don't think people fully understand the impact that your team collectively has had on this community. You mentioned the Walton family early, and they've certainly done an awful lot. But there are no greater cheerleaders for this community in terms of attracting, more than candidates, attracting families than what you all have done. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of so many of us that I know have tremendous gratitude for what you all are doing.
Thank you.
De-
I appreciate that.
Denise,
And we have gotten together as a group and just start laughing. And I so wish we had a journal for all the stories of
yeah,
everything we've been through. And even I wish I kept more of a journal of people I had placed and
yeah,
just
it's
stay in touch. But
almost like a doctor who delivers babies, right? So, oh, we
yeah,
brought this family, we brought this
yeah,
family. Yeah.
right.
All right.
So
Well,
thank
Denise
you.
Natishan, senior partner from Cameron Smith and Associates, it has been so nice to sit down and learn more about you and get your perspectives on the world that we're all living in. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you'll give
Thanks, Matt.
Cameron my best, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.